Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live interview with the Masters. I'm happy to present. We have the wonderful and amazing Tyson Murphy, who's the lead character artist at Blizzard Entertainment. But before we get started with today's session, I have a brief announcement. Just remember, registration is currently open for our spring term, and then classes are filling up. So please make sure you check out our site and register today. Again, for the spring term, registration is currently still open, and make sure you just get on there and sign up for classes because you might not be able to get on. If not, we do have a waiting list, but to avoid that, try to get your classes as soon as possible. With that being said, we're going to basically begin our session today, again with the amazing Tyson Murphy. So what I'm going to do now is, for the most part, while Tyson gives his introduction, I want all the attendees to look for the question module that basically is a part of your GoToWebinar interface, and enter in any questions you may have during this entire talk into that chat module, and basically we'll be able to ask those questions on your behalf during the session. Again, look for that question module and enter all your questions there, and we'll get to them in the order that they are received, and as many as we actually can do in the time that we have. Today's meeting will be hopefully within the 1 hour time mark. We may go a little bit over, but we do have another session after that, so we can't go too far past that time frame. So again, make sure you enter in all your questions in the question module as the session is going on. So without any further ado, I'm going to basically pass control over to Mr. Tyson to let us see his wonderful screen and have him give us an introduction as to who he is, how he got into the industry, where he works, etc. So Tyson, you should see an option pop up for you.
Yeah, let's see. Is that showing the correct screen there?
Yes, sir.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I'm Tyson Murphy, as was stated. Let's see. I've been in the industry for, how long now? Maybe 6, 7-ish years. I went to school at BYU in Utah, where I was in the animation program there, and kind of did a whole bunch of stuff. I did some character animation at Avalanche, which is Disney Interactive, and then a couple other internships, one being at Blizzard Entertainment on Diablo, and yeah, a few other things here and there. Chair Entertainment, some contract work for them, various freelance illustration and 3D work. My job now, I'm the lead character artist at Blizzard on World of Warcraft, and primarily my job is actually 3D modeling and texture painting, as well as concept art, and again some other illustration work for Blizzard. But yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now. Everything. So.
Okay. And actually, we have our first question, and they're asking, define lead character artist. Like, what does that mean? Isn't that a 3D title or position?
Yeah, so Blizzard is maybe a little bit different from other studios in that a character artist generally does their own concept art as well. So it's, our skill set is very much concept art, as well as basic 3D modeling and texture painting. And I guess the reasoning for that is a lot of the texture painting that we do is very illustrative and very painterly, and so it's those disciplines bleed over into each other quite a bit. So yeah, so that's kind of explains that a little bit, but I kind of do quite a bit of that, so, like all different things. So.
Okay, and another question is, what kinds of studies did you do as a student to help improve your color and lighting skills? Or they ask, or what studies would you now recommend to students trying to improve their lighting and color skills?
Um, I think I did all types when I was a student, and I probably do more now than when I was a student. When I was a student, I kind of had, these, I guess, delusions, where I wanted everything that I did to be this totally unique, finished illustration or piece of concept art, and I wanted it to be totally mine. You almost see people like wear it as a badge of honor when they say, "Oh, I did this painting, in like 2 hours, whatever," and I didn't use any reference, so, you know, I'm pretty good or whatever. But I think that's uh, a pretty hard, you know, misconception that that is some sort of skill. I think it's interesting. It's kind of like quirky, and if you don't use reference,
Right.
and I definitely thought that way when I was a student more, and so I realize now how important studies are. Anyways, I did studies of films, a lot of film studies, a lot of animation and live action, and then also just photo studies. If I saw a portrait or something that I thought had really cool lighting, I would just study that. Pictures of sculptures is a really good thing to do because they're generally the same material and stuff. Um, Literally anything, and from life, I guess, is the best thing. I don't do a lot of plein air painting or anything like that, but life is the ultimate thing to study from. So I'd say anything, basically.
All right. Okay, and in that same vein, I actually have a couple more questions that, for the most part, want to know to what degree, like, did you utilize traditional art to basically teach yourself? Like, were you taught traditional oil painting at school, or did you teach yourself that painterly style within Photoshop, for example?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. So I've always drawn traditionally. I do a lot of ink work and quite a bit of watercolor, a lot of pencil, and I still prefer to draw that way. Um, and rendering with markers, like Prisma markers, is really fun too. As far as painting goes, oil paint. I'm pretty limited with that, and it is something I want to get into more. But digital painting is kind of where I grew up, I guess. I don't have. So to answer the question, no, I didn't really do a whole. I took a couple oil painting classes, but nothing that really uh, that I really latched onto for a very long time. So,
Okay, but no other traditional media at all?
um, yeah, just what I mentioned. Like we do figure drawing and took a lot of gesture drawing classes, which are we would use Conte or charcoal to on like newsprint. A lot of that, and then just ink and watercolor and pencil. That's kind of I haven't done too much traditional painting. Um, no, I don't think I've ever tried gouache or limited oil paint. So, but yeah, that's something I would like to do more of. So,
And what is your take on the whole speed painting trend that seems to be going around these days?
um, I don't mind it too much. Let's see, it is a gray area, I guess, and I know it rubs some people the wrong way. Um, but there's a lot of quote speed painters that I respect like so much. Goro, Fujita, Matthias Versalt. Those guys are like incredible, and I think a lot of people confuse speed painting with they just focus on like the speed or whatever, where that's like the cool thing. But um, I don't think it matters if a painting takes 100 hours or if it takes 30 minutes. Like if you are you know telling a story and providing something unique to the art community, then that's they're both just as valuable. So, uh, but I do think that it's dangerous to again focus on that speed part of it. To say, okay, I'm gonna like this is my thing. I'm just gonna speed paint before learning kind of the basic principles and fundamentals is pretty dangerous.
Okay. And actually, and back to more, I guess, this painting theme. Is
Mhm.
your painting process similar to how most folks at Blizzard paint? One commenter asked because it seems, or because it has such an awesome feel to it, basically.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you. I I can't speak too much to how everyone else paints. Obviously there are styles kind of at any studio or any project that you'll be working on that you need to adhere to, and obviously interacting with people, your workmates and stuff, you're going to pick up sort of a lot of the same tricks and stuff. I would say most of my painting experience, I guess, or style or whatever, kind of comes from uh, the Avalanche studio, which is Disney Interactive in Utah. Sam Nielsen was my digital painting teacher in school, and so I gravitate a lot towards kind of how they paint still to this day. But I don't know what I am now, sort of an amalgamation. But there are definitely a lot of people use a lot of similar techniques and stuff. So.
Okay, and what was that transition like for you coming from school into the industry?
Um, I felt pretty good about it. I think one thing that someone told me early on in school that I was really grateful for was to basically don't compare yourself to your classmates, which, we might hear that like, yeah, don't compare yourself, like everyone's good, whatever. But they meant it more as a, don't compare yourself to your classmates, compare yourself to industry professionals.
Right.
And which can be a really hard pill to swallow. But I felt prepared as far as, my first internship was maybe 2 or 3 years before I actually graduated. And so I had a few internships under my belt. I felt pretty well prepared to go into the industry. And I think that's really, really important as far as, don't wait until you're done and then be like, okay, let me get a portfolio together here and start looking at some companies. I think day one of school you should be, constantly interested in what's out there and how are you going to get out there and, how to prepare yourself for that. So.
Right. And could you share any struggles that you may have had when starting out as a professional artist and how you overcame them?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm still struggling, and I'm not sure if it will go away, kind of that feeling and that pressure. I think the biggest struggle is, well, for me at least, was kind of getting into the industry and feeling kind of like a fake, I guess, where, all these artists that I have respected for so many years and built up in my mind, and now I'm working with them, and it's really tough to look at my own work and see how far I have to go and say, I should not be here. Like, I am not up to these guys' caliber. And that can really weigh pretty heavily on you. And I think you have to focus on, at least what helped me was focusing on what other people told me, and like people that I trust. So good friends and mentors in the industry. This sounds kind of shallow, like I needed their approval or whatever, but I think that is kind of what helped me. Like listen to your mom, or your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your friends, or other artists. If they're saying, no, like you're really strong at this kind of stuff, you have to believe them and kind of take that to heart. Otherwise, I go insane, because if I'm in here in my room just kind of looking at what everyone else does and looking at what I do, I will.
It's easy to get overwhelmed, basically, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I see a few questions popping up, and they're anxious to get to your work. We already had one question asking about how long it took you to create the Sword in the Stone illustration. Another person wants to just dive right in and just get to your layers and how they're set up and what they're looking at. So would you mind going?
Yeah, I'll try to answer if there's any other ones as I go through this stuff. But
okay,
I thought I'd kind of show this little concept I have like the Disney things here too. Hopefully they're interesting. I don't know how enlightening it'll be, but so yeah, I have just to show my general kind of process, starting with a sketch, uh, and then this is basically flat color, um, and I go through probably a different process for every painting I do, but I feel like this is one that I can lean back on. So these are my local colors, kind of nothing else, just flat color. Um, when I go up from there, that's kind of a big jump, but it's basically just rendering and painting, adding an occlusion, getting where my light source is, rim lights, stuff like that. Um, these are just some tweaks.
And how long do these actual, like, if you were to rate the layers by amount of time spent from your initial sketch to the blocking in of the color to then the rendering phase,
Right.
how long does it take for each of those progressions?
I would say the sketch is pretty quick. It was maybe, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes. The flat color, maybe around the same, 20 minutes maybe. The longest part by far is the rendering, and then also kind of the tweaking of the design as we go. I think the last 20% of your painting is going to take you like, or takes me at least maybe 80% of the time. So it's kind of flipped, and it's just something I like. I know it kind of takes a long time to get that rendered quality out, but I think it's a good thing to invest in professionally, and I really enjoy doing it. So, yeah.
And actually, before you continue, someone said that he noticed a slightly similar art style within artists that work for Avalanche Software that studied at BYU. Were most of you taught by the same instructor at BYU, or is this something you developed by working together as friends?
Yeah, it's kind of I mean, this is totally just how I see it and perceive it, but they have a very strong culture, I think at BYU and at Avalanche, of learning and becoming good artists and kind of developing certain styles, and they do a really good job of that painterly kind of cartoony look. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, Sam Nielsen was our teacher in school, and so he instilled a lot of this on us, and then the yeah, working there just kind of reinforces that. So I think it's just that culture of like the person who asked the question said, just painting with your friends, striving to learn and to push into certain styles, and it all just kind of bleeds over. And so yeah, that's probably why that is, I guess.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, so I guess I'll talk about this stuff a little bit. Okay. I guess I should give the disclaimer with these Disney things. There is some misconception as far as, they've been around on the internet and stuff, and it's I don't know how many times I'm almost regretting that it happened, because these are purely studies for, number one, for fun, number two, to kind of learn, to start with a jumping off point and kind of just learn lighting. You can never be kind of the original Disney films. Like there's no beating that charm. These are totally for fun, so it's not, I'm not trying to make a statement or anything like that with these, but
they're still beautiful nonetheless.
Well, thanks. they're really fun though. So here's the frame I start with these things, and if I jump back to this, it's basically at this stage of my process, meaning what's taken care of here is a composition, a character design, and my flat colors even are all here. And so, yeah, I wanted to learn some lighting, and I kind of, with these older Disney films where they're not putting shading into the cells, or they're not really painting the backgrounds, one day I just realized like that's basically kind of my flat color stage of like a painting. And so, yeah, just kind of went from there, and just treat it like an illustration. And so yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing that it's basically stopped at one step of that process. So let's see, I'm not sure what layers I actually have here. I'll just kind of give my general breakdown of how I went about this, but so I'm one thing I learned from doing these is treating everything in layers, meaning, you know, when I first looked at this, it can get really confusing as far as like everything that's going on. And to make it easier for myself, you know, I made selections of each individual piece that I thought I could cut out into its own thing. So I have, you know, I don't know if you can see like the marquee going around these selections, but you know, I have a selection of Roger here. I have a selection of her and the bench. Selection here of the tree and kind of this bush, and then everything else is just background. And what that allowed me to do is kind of think in layers and really organize this a lot easier for myself. So yeah, with the background, this is basically the painting I did for the background, and that's it. If I toggle between these two things, you know, from the get-go, I wanted to kind of I wanted it to be a sunny day. I wanted it to feel like we were under this tree, and you know, I wanted it. You know, hopefully we've all kind of experienced that in life where it's a sunny kind of hot day, which I know people have called me out that London is never sunny or hot, but you know, and you're under a tree and you feel that the sun kind of coming through some of the leaves, and just that feeling, I kind of wanted to try and emulate that or try to capture that. And so, and I thought that would kind of, what's the word? Push even the nostalgia of the film a little bit. Kind of help us, you know, remember what it feels like to see these films for the first time. So yeah, the background I just decided to make very bright. The painting is exposed for the shadows, meaning, you know, the background is getting a lot more blown out and losing detail and stuff in the bright areas, and then in the shadowy areas is where the detail is continuing. And I think that kind of reinforces the feeling that we're under this tree and kind of looking out into the bright environment around us. So yeah, all I did for this background, I did change quite a bit. I don't know why. I kind of wanted a feeling of these clouds to be a little more storybook, a little more like full. And you know, I wanted to fill this space up just with a little something that's interesting, just some kind of storybook-esque clouds. You know, getting some of the sky coming into these leaves here, in the shadow parts of these leaves. You know, nothing too major. And then, yeah, I just have this, I blurred it to simulate, you know, like a depth of field on a camera. And that's basically it for the background. So yeah, that's kind of the final background. And then again, thinking in those layers, this is kind of that next layer is the tree and the bush. And I mean, yeah, I didn't stay true to like a lot of the original here, and I kind of wish I would have. You know, I totally failed kind of capturing the energy of these bushes and these leaves and the lines on this tree and stuff. But you know, just trying to make it look a little more like a modern film or whatever. And yeah, I didn't really do. I'm trying to think with the tree and the bush if there was anything that stood out. Just capturing this cool shadow, you know, on the top side of these limbs that are being covered in leaves. And it's pretty tough keeping that feeling that there's leaves above us and I probably could have, covered the actual like trunk here probably in a little more dappled light. It kind of looks like it's being lit directly right here, like by the sun, which is probably incorrect. And then, I wasn't too happy with how she turned out. I kind of rushed her at the end, but the trying to make her stand out from the bush, and she's a little subdued in the painting, and so she's pretty difficult. But basically, I just lit her, imagining some sunlight kind of coming through some leaves and lighting her up here and there. Let me see if I have like another. I don't think this is actually my final painting of this, but yeah, it's the process of it anyways. Yeah, then we have Roger, who is probably kind of the main focus of it. He took the longest as well, so yeah, I tried to kind of I probably repainted his face like 30 different times, and trying to achieve this dappled light look again on his jacket and everything. Yeah, I guess I could show, if you guys are interested or whatever, like how I approach it from the start.
I think everyone would appreciate that. They're saying yes in all caps. Um, so while you do that, that'll be great. I have a couple of questions that they were entering as you were talking.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of them actually have to do, like every person asked the same question, is
Hmm.
how do you okay, first of all, what is the occlusion layer for, or the occlusion lighting technique, and how do you implement that into a given composition, basically?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so occlusion is really, really important, and you could paint just occlusion and probably still come out with a pretty cool painting. An example of occlusion kind of lighting is like, for example, if you're in a room, look up at like the corners of the room, and you'll notice they get darker, where the walls meet. And what's happening there is basically occlusion. I'll just draw really quick. Let me find brush. So if you have like a corner here, light, we know bounces. I'll keep this really brief because it is, but I don't know another way to explain it. So light, as it comes towards this corner, is going to start bouncing off of these surfaces and going away. And what's happening, you can tell, like, as the light bounces around and reaches that corner, it's one, it's getting weaker, and two, it's just a hard to reach place for that light. And you can literally look around at anything, and wherever any two objects are meeting, there is there's occlusion happening there. So I'll kind of show you here, because that's kind of one of my first steps with this. I'm gonna crop this for now. We'll just focus on like Roger here. So my first step with these things, it might, I don't know if this is a disappointment or what you guys are thinking, but I kind of had to paint over every little thing on it. So I kept the general shape, but it was a better way to learn to break everything down as much as I could. Let me show you what I mean. For example, here on Roger, I'm basically just selecting a light gray sort of multiply. And just going over everything on him. And I didn't forget about the occlusion. I'm getting there.
No problem.
Let's see. and I'm kind of establishing first off, the ambient light that's going on. So him being under a tree basically means he's going to have a lot of lighting from the sky, which is going to cool him down. It's going to, not be very direct or anything. And I just have a light in layer on right now, and I'm painting over just the line work on him. Get rid of some of those. Okay. And let's see. I'm gonna cool him down a little bit just with the hue saturation. Let's see here. That did basically nothing. Okay. So if we swap back to, let me bring this one up. What I'm starting to paint right now is these grayer areas, these shadowy areas. I'm basically starting with that. And so this is where the occlusion comes in. I'm just selecting that. And then I'll grab a overlay and just grab my soft brush here. And I'm going to get a cool gray. And okay, so occlusion, again, his arm and his jacket here are meeting. And so I want, as we get deeper into that crevice there, the light is having a harder time getting into there. And so I'm going to just go over that and paint that stuff in. Outside, ambient light is literally coming from everywhere. The sky, is a total dome over us that is lighting us, and even the ground is bouncing up. Light's bouncing around everywhere, so I'm not really thinking about a direct light source right now. As I say that, I guess if there is a slight direction, it's from up or from the sides. That's where the sky is usually. So yeah, these areas that are getting closer together, I'm just kind of defining and making sure they feel right. I guess it could be hard, I guess, to start out when you're first starting out to kind of guess this occlusion stuff. I do a lot of 3D work, and our job is to paint it as if it is 3D, and so I guess that's where some of my experience with that comes from. I've done quite a bit of actual 3D rendering even in school, some lighting, which also helps me. After looking at a lot of ambient occlusion actual renders in 3D, you start to be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Right. If I could jump in there, as a 3D artist myself, we are familiar with ambient occlusion as a method to basically both define how bright an area is, but more importantly, how much, I guess you can say, of that surface is blocked by adjacent surfaces. So in essence, if there's a light shining on a form, a 3D form, as the light hits that surface and falls off along the sides, it gets darker because less light is hitting it. So typically in deep crevices where contact of two surfaces are basically, hitting at a boundary, you have that darker, shadowy information in essence. So ambient occlusion is basically a method to, approximate this real-life effect of where all this ambient light, this omnidirectional light, is hitting the surface at all times, and there's places where the light cannot reach. So based on that angle of the surface in relation to the light, you have a fall off of, going from bright illumination towards a dark shadow, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, 3D. I mean, there's
yes,
even other names for it in the illustration world. I've heard people call them, like dark accents and stuff like that. And uh, Sam Nielsen, who was my teacher, has an amazing mind, and I think also has experience with 3D work, and so he thinking it all out, like understanding it, is really really helpful. Right now I'm not thinking too much about angles and trajectory of light and stuff like that. It's more uh, you just kind of feel it at this point and just be like, oh, okay, this like looks totally wrong, or that looks stupid, but yeah, I do think it is important to understand what's going on, like scientifically.
right. Well, that's actually a level that even I can't articulate.
Yeah,
Uh, but in
who knows
essence, you
for sure.
yeah, I mean, I could go look it up on Wikipedia or something crazy like that. But in
Yeah.
essence, you're just basically you're sculpting using shading. You're trying to define the volume that
Hmm.
this particular object or surface is occupying. So
Right.
I
But
guess
yeah, it's.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I guess a good study is basically just looking at primitive forms like spheres, cubes, cones, cylinders,
Yeah.
and look how just observing how they are defined in space, and basically that shading that you will be trying to recreate. In essence, occlusion is part of that or component of that modeling of the form in 2D. In essence,
Exactly.
so you're just defining the shapes basically.
Uh-huh. And I mean, take his arm here, for example. It'd be really easy to go, okay, I'm going to define this form, so let me, put another shadow over here and kind of define that. But, hopefully even just looking at that, you can kind of tell, like, something looks wrong with that. And, yeah, this first pass is totally just because his arm over here is not coming into contact with anything. It's being lit by that ambient light, and so we don't need to like shade that part. So it is being selective as far as where am I defining these forms. We don't need to go crazy into every
Exactly.
little thing. Um, so yeah, this is probably a little rougher than when I was actually doing it or whatever. But so that's where that is. The next step, and I guess another disclaimer with these, it's never like I literally repainted his entire face like 5 times, and so it's the most important thing I think with painting in general is just doing something and then being able to react off that and say, okay, I tried this out, it looks bad, I need to repaint it, or doing it and saying, okay, that looks okay, I'm gonna keep it, and that's in the hour it's a little harder to go back and forth and
Right.
correct things I'm saying that are wrong and whatever, but that's definitely something. I mean, yeah, there's no tricks. It
No way
takes.
around that, basically.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think so. Maybe there might be. Okay, so now I'm going to think about a different light source, the main light source, the key light here, so which is the sun, and I'm going to try making a color dodge layer. I'm going to grab my bristly brush here, and I really like color dodge. I don't know why. It's just cooler than dodge, and I don't know. But so I'm just going to basically experiment with colors here. Again, just doing like anything to just get an idea of what I could do here. I'm actually going to light. I feel like I took them a little too dark overall, so I'm just going to lighten that thing. I'd probably go back and paint out these lines even more. They're feeling not super, I mean, they're in the way. But so anyways, back to my color dodge. Just experimenting here with what the sunlight hitting that orange jacket will look like. That feels a little more correct. So, you know, in my mind, I'm kind of thinking this light coming through the tree and how that would, where that would hit and what it would do, basically. I'm kind of thinking it's from like the, let's see, top right, kind of behind us,
Right over
coming
the
through those
shoulder.
leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just blocking in really rough, and then I'm coming in here with like a smudge brush, which I should give credit to whoever made all my brushes and stuff.
That's hilarious because someone just asked that question.
Oh, really?
Like, are most of your brushes customized by you, or did you get any from other
uh,
artists or any
I
free ones on the
stole
net?
I stole every one of these. I actually did make this bristle brush, and but a lot of my I don't even. There's so many people. I think Zedig, the Avalanche guys, Dan Levisi is a lot of these. I yeah, I would love to give credit to who I took them from, but anytime like a brush set pops up on, I see a link on Facebook or something, I'm just like, I just grab it and put it in the mix and see if it works. But yeah, so
Right. Especially if you
that's
got it several years ago, it's kind of hard to remember.
yeah, yeah. No, I made these all myself. So yeah, I'm kind of, this is kind of a weird lighting scheme, trying to get light coming through something, and if it's confusing me, then I'll just pretend it's not dappled. It's just direct sunlight, and then I can come in and like erase stuff.
Right. Now, I have a question here asking, do you stay within a certain saturation level in your flat colors, or do you have any tips or guides on how to go about getting those local colors?
Um, so local colors, I I think by definition, local color is how that color looks under like
Neutral lighting,
white,
probably.
yeah, like neutral lighting. And so I try to just kind of guess in the beginning. Um, the reason I made this a little grayer again is because he's under the tree, and I wanted him overall to kind of feel a little cooler, like he's in that shadow. Um, but it's always a back and forth with me. Like I'll just do something that kind of looks right to get started, and again, keeping in mind that I'm gonna paint over all of it. Like at no point am I gonna put down a color and be like, okay, yep, I'm totally happy with that. Even my final colors, I'm not totally happy with, and so it's less depressing to just say I'm gonna paint over this whole thing like maybe a couple different times. And keep that in your mind as a plan. I mean, this works for me. Maybe other people don't do this, but if I have it in my head as a plan, I'm not disappointed when I get it wrong the first try. So get as close as you can the first try, and then uh, tweak as needed as you go. So
Right. Someone wants to know, are there any good lighting artists you can recommend or share as inspiration?
um, yeah, I mean, I assume they mean like 2D. Again, Sam Nielsen was my teacher. I reference his work all the time. And, there's a lot of different Blizzard artists that I look at: Laurel Austin, Glenn Rain, Mr. Jack, which is Luke Mancini.
And
Chris Robinson is our art director, who is really awesome.
any textbooks?
Textbooks. Yeah, there's that James Gurney one. I think it's called. I think it's like The Art of Color and Light or something like that. That one's really cool. Uh, I haven't read too many books on actual painting or digital painting. I think that's the only one that I've actually read. I think Don Siegmiller had one a while ago, that was pretty cool. Um, yeah, I'm not, as far as books go, I have a lot of like, you know, Drawn to Life and like some other more drawing books, but yeah, I don't know too many different painting books, so.
Okay. Another commenter here basically says, you mentioned that most of your professional work is done in 3D, but your personal work seems to all be 2D. Do you keep your professional and homework separate on purpose?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. You're making me think about my life. Um, I don't, it must be just a natural inclination to, uh, like, I do a lot of stuff at work, and maybe it's just natural at home to do something a little bit different. Uh, that might be the only explanation as far as that goes. But yeah, that's probably correct. I really enjoy doing 3D work, and I don't want to not do it, and so I probably get my fill from that at work, and then yeah, I still do some 3D stuff at home. I think I just barely posted like a little hand-painted sort of 3D head that I did just in my free time at home. But I do think that I want to get a lot better at 2D art, and I just working at home is a good place to have the time to try and get better at it. So.
And which do you consider to be more your passion, the 2D or 3D?
Oh, that's a tough one too. If I had to, let's see, there's a whole world of 3D that I'm not super skilled at. You know, more super high poly modeling and super, you know, realistic stuff. And I'm just not as skilled at that stuff. And so, again, the 3D work that I do is very illustrative. I'm still painting a lot into the textures, and you know, we're not. I don't like to, you know, rely on like normal maps and stuff like that too much. So, I would say I am probably mostly involved with 2D and illustration-y kind of stuff. But you know, that could change. Maybe, you know, if they make it easier for me to do super realistic high poly stuff, you know, I might get better at that. It's just not a part of my skill set right now, so
Right.
Yeah.
We have another question here that an attendee wants to know, or basically states that smudge tool seems really interesting. Could you talk about the settings on it?
Yeah. So I think I think this is, whose smudge tool is this? I think it's someone from Avalanche. It might be Sam's. I don't know. But so yeah, basically, I think the biggest thing with smudge tools is the spacing. I think the default smudge tool has no spacing. Let me test this out before I start lying to you. It still looks pretty good. But try to. Well, I can just show you the settings here, but you know, got kind of this textured brush. This feels like I'm taking credit for the thing. Again, I didn't make this. I don't know who made it, but like, genius. So yeah, I think making sure you have some spacing and maybe a little bit of scattering, just to make sure the smudge is like, you're not just like blurring it, and you're not just like pulling it around. It's like leaving some sort of tooth behind.
Something more organic, basically.
Yeah, I think that's pretty important. So, yeah, it's basically just kind of those settings here, but mess around with like the spacing. I think that adds quite a bit. So, so yeah, I'll kind of like jump ahead a little bit here. After I feel okay about where my blocking with this light is, this is when I basically like collapse everything, and just paint on a normal layer. I'll use overlays and stuff as I go still, but I want to get as quickly as possible to just painting on like basically a single layer, and then using layers as I need. When you rely too much on like all your different color modes and all your different blendings and stuff, it can get really hectic. So
So do you
yeah, that's
often find
basically.
yourself flattening your layers to get a basic composition on the single layer and then paint on that going forward?
Yeah, I would like I'll even just flatten all this stuff down. So yeah, that's all flat, no going back.
Fully
Good dad.
committed.
Yeah. Um, yeah, this is where, like again, just not being like I don't care about painting over any of this stuff. Because I hate it. uh, but if you keep that attitude of like, okay, I did this quickly, I'll just like paint over it. It's not a big deal. That took me a really long time to be okay with. Like, I'd first get critiques and like from Sam and people like that where they would totally paint over my thing, and I'd be like, what are you serious? Like, I'm not painting. I just painted all of that. And but if you can get, oh shoot, I always forget how to get rid of these things. Oh well, just leave it there.
What do you
Um,
the okay. That's good.
these
Tell you.
little, oh well.
Oh,
Um, is
do
it
you
the
have
eye drop tool?
caps lock turned on?
No. Oh well. There's no way to know. The science hasn't figured it out yet. Okay. It keeps bugging me. What was I saying? Yeah, if you can get in that mode of like, because once you paint over something and you're like, you know what, that is better. Uh, that will like change everything for you. Like, you know, I'm trying to get a little further ahead on this. So his jacket's feeling pretty monochromatic, so I'm gonna like up the saturation here for basically these midtones and kind of the edge of this light here.
And actually, while you're doing that, there's a question that came up earlier that I didn't ask in regards to uh, the light areas in his face. So typically, like you're doing now with his coat, how do you pick those colors that work? In the case of this question, they're referring to the skin, but I guess it applies overall to different components of the composition.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I said it before, kind of just going with something and reacting off of that. So if I looked at this, I'd say, okay, his shadowy skin looks like blueberry blue. That looks like incorrect. The light side of his skin here looks super pale, like something weird is going on here. And so I don't have the exact answer right now for how to like fix that stuff, but as I paint, I'll probably start to figure it out. So if I want to get rid of that paleness, I'll take this, which is pretty desaturated, bump up the saturation and just start putting that in. I guess my answer to the question is just to try anything, and then just doing studies and having painted skin before is going to help with that. But yeah, just keep in mind that you might need to course correct.
Okay.
This blueberry skin, I'll probably.
And we had an attendee here, Nicholas Kennedy, basically gave a suggestion as to some really great smudge pack brushes. I think they're on DeviantArt. He just said to Google John Silva, and he did provide a link for everyone, but I can't copy and paste it for some reason. So Allison, if you're there and can access that link, could you please send it to everybody? No worries, Nicholas. It's not your fault. Thanks, Allison. She just sent it out to everybody. So
It's a good tip.
and we'll make sure you get a copy of that link as well, Mr. Tyson.
Yeah, some more brushes to steal. So yeah, again here on the face, I think that feels a little better putting that color back into there. This is where I'd probably make like a soft light or an overlay and grab my soft brush and just any color variation is better than no color variation, I have found. And so coming in here with like a deeper red will help me with that variation that I'm losing.
Is there a document or source that explains the different layer modes and how they work for specific types of color applications? Or is this just trial by error and you have a predetermined idea?
I would love a document like that. But as far as for what I'm doing, I think it is just kind of trial and error. In my mind, I just have like soft light. I think it's not quite as powerful, as overlay. Overlay, that's when I really want to, push some saturate. Like I think just using them is probably the best way to, because even with an explanation, you might not know exactly like what that means as far as how you can use it. So.
Right. I know in 3D, it basically involves all that wonderful stuff you learn in school and math, basically. So each layer blend corresponds to a particular math operation.
Yeah.
Addition, subtraction, multiplication, dot products, things like that. So.
No one wants to learn that.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too technical.
I'm coming in and adding a little bit of a grayer light source here in the shadows, just thinking of that like sky shining on him. Just flipping the canvas to see how bad everything is.
And what hotkey combination was that you used?
I think I put it in myself, but I just have it set to F2. Up here on his nose, like, the nose, like a lot of cartilage and just kind of extra skin and stuff, and so get rid of these lines. It'd be cool to, kind of show that light coming through there. So just saturating it a little bit and showing it build up there. Which, I mean, yeah, technically all skin does that, but I can do it here on his cheek as well. So yeah, I think the best way to, I wouldn't recommend doing these as like a, portfolio piece or anything like that, but for studies, they're really fun, and I think the best way is to totally break it down. Like I've seen a few that people have been doing, and they're, I think the first thing is picking a film that will actually be helpful. A lot of movies out there are already painted, really painted backgrounds and totally shaded characters and stuff, and that probably won't be as helpful. And after you find like a good one, it's all about like totally breaking it down and to where you're painting basically like a new illustration. Like, by the end, ideally you'd have painted over like absolutely, everything in there.
Right. So we have time for a couple more questions. I want to get to one concerning when you applied to Blizzard. But before we do that question, because I think we can end on that.
All right.
What was the purpose of you flipping the canvas? We have a few people who are curious as to the nature of why you're doing that.
So flipping the canvas, basically, I think there's something about it that refreshes your view of it. It's kind of like when you step away from a painting for a little while and then you come back and all of a sudden you see some errors. Or if you're looking at someone else's painting and like you see things that they don't see. And because we get so into it, it's hard to kind of always be seeing it objectively. And I think So the reasoning is because it kind of gives you that fresh view. It looks like your mind, right when it flips, your mind kind of goes, oh, this is like a new painting. And so you flip it, and you can maybe see some things that you didn't before. Um, there's this drawing exercise that people would do where they would draw, study from photos or something upside down. Not like they wouldn't go upside down. They would flip the photo upside down and paint it like that. And so that they weren't thinking about, like, you know, their mind wasn't getting in the way. They were just painting like abstract shapes. And I think that's similar, like just kind of giving your brain a little refresh on it. So
Right. Okay, and I'll ask these last few questions before we wrap up the session.
yeah.
So the question that was posed before was, when you applied to Blizzard, did your portfolio consist of all character artwork, or did you have a variety of things?
Um, so I had a variety of things. My first internship with Blizzard was a environment art internship, which got switched kind of my like first day into character art, which was interesting. And then they, I've always kind of had just a propensity, I guess, to doing. I like doing 3D. I like doing 2D. I like doing. I mean, I am totally character art now, but I liked environments. I think it comes down to each individual person as far as where your interests are. If it's definitely not important to say I need to be able to do everything. The most important thing is to say, what do I really, really enjoy, and what, like, could I possibly get good at enough to, get a job doing. And I think that's most important. And I think for me, I couldn't like let go of doing a bunch of things, and so I kind of just stayed doing that. And it's worked out so far. I do wish, that I was a little more focused with a lot of stuff, and so I would say do whatever you think that you can basically execute on. Get other people's feedback if they're saying, oh wow, like you're pretty good at all this stuff, like that'd be cool for a studio to see. Then yeah, like continue going with that. But if you get feedback and they're saying you really need to start focusing, I would take that advice to heart, and just because they know you better than I do, and you might be spread a little bit too thin. But yeah, I think that goes for kind of everything out there. So.
Okay, and I guess I'll ask one last question that kind of, I guess, I don't, well, it partially wraps up everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we had an attendee who says, I'm a 2D artist with little to no 3D experience, just basic knowledge. Will that hinder my professional endeavors into game and concept art?
That's a tough question again, because it can be different for everyone. Like if you are constantly getting feedback that you are incredible at concept art, and you're not shouldn't be worried about stuff like that, then I would say no. Like it's not gonna hinder you if you don't know that stuff. And I think the same thing. Like I think most opportunities out there are less general and more specific, as far as I'm doing 2D, I'm doing 3D. Maybe I'm a bad example for people to be looking at as far as career path goes, because I do think that most places out there are a little more segmented, and
They tend to
they're
look
not
for
gonna.
specialists, basically.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean it's a hard thing to say, but if you research the studios that you're interested in, see what they want, and there might be some smaller like studios out there that are like, yeah, we would love it if people could do all these different things. Then I'd say go for that. I'm probably repeating myself, but going for what you like to do is like way more important. And so I remember in school, there was a lot of attitude as far as like, I don't care what job you give me, just give me a job. And that like will never work out in the long run. Like no one ever, no like, amazing artist was like, I had a portfolio full of everything and I just said, give me anything. And then, I'm this, director on this like film. I don't know, maybe it did happen, but it, it's much more common for people to just go with what they're passionate about, and that is what will kind of hold you over, I think, and really open up the opportunities for you. So,
Awesome. Well, Tyson, I want to say thank you again for an amazing, amazing demonstration and just afternoon with you and your work.
yeah,
We all greatly appreciate it. For all our attendees, I thank you as well for attending and supporting us in these wonderful live interview with the master sessions. Again, just to give you another quick note, remember registration is currently open for all our spring term, and classes are actually filling up. So please register quickly and try to join today if you can, because they are selling out fast. Beyond that, again, I want to thank Tyson for just giving us his time and showing us amazing work and just being so cool. Again,
yeah,
Tyson, thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you guys.
It's our pleasure. That's all for now. Talk to the rest of you guys later. There should be another Q&A happening, I think, an hour from now. So check the website if you want to sit in on that 3D Q&A, I think, going on. But beyond that, take care, enjoy the rest of your weekends, and see you all soon.